Hello? Oh, good. Hi, Shirley. Can you hear me? Hi, Anna. Okay, good. Can you guys hear me? Can you let me know? Um, oh, okay, good. Let's see. I think I'll wait a little bit to make sure everyone who wants to join gets here. So maybe like another 30 seconds or so. Um, yeah, I hope I'm doing this right, like this setup. Hope it's okay. Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure how many people are joining right now, but I think since it's a minute past already, maybe I should just start. Um, okay. So my name is Jenny Sue. Oh, I want to see the delay on the comment feed. Okay. Okay. um, yeah, this is different to me. But this is my first time doing like a live Facebook video, so I hope everything goes smoothly. My name is Jenny Sue. I'm going to be your workshop leader today. Um, I am a PhD student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I'm in my third year of the PhD program. I've done documentation work in Indonesia on a language called Helong on the island of Timor, and I've also done a little work in Micronesia on the island of Kosrae on Kosraean. I'm also interested in kind of looking at new approaches to language conservation. So this is a very perfect topic for me to be talking about today. This is our last official workshop of the webinar series. But don't forget to join tomorrow because there is a special session with two guest speakers. And I believe next week you'll have a presentation session. So that'll be really fun and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, today's topic is language conservation and funding. And I know it was advertised as language revitalization, but since I don't know how, like what situations you guys are with the languages you guys are documenting and what the I don't know what the status is. Revitalization has a very kind of specific situation, so I wanted to use conservation since it's a more of a umbrella type of term. So language conservation, what is it? It's an effort to preserve and or reverse the decline of a language. It's a field split into language maintenance and language revitalization. So language maintenance methods and programs should be aimed at speaking communities facing pressures to change, where revitalization methods should focus on languages that have undergone detrimental shift, where children no longer learn the language. And revitalization can also be called language revival, reclamation, reversing language shift, and awakening. So there is that difference, right, between maintenance methods and revitalization methods. For language revitalization, that's a situation where the language doesn't have any more children speaking anymore. And with maintenance, maybe all generations are speaking, but maybe you see some like cracks or maybe some shifts starting to happen. Like maybe it's not being spoken in all domains or anything like that, even though everyone from young to old are still speaking the language, right? So this is why I think it's a really important differentiation to make between maintenance and revitalization methods, even though the strategies do overlap a lot. But I do believe that there's going to be some like maintenance methods, for instance, that just won't be able to work in situations of revitalization just because maybe of the speaker numbers or something like that, right? So you really have to look at it by a case-by-case basis. And this is what I talk about here. So strategies or policies that are enacted must be based on which path of conservation needs to be taken in regards to the current vitality of the language and its relationship with external pressures. The decision to implement language conservation methods is a decision made on a case-by-case basis by different people within and with the language community. So yeah, it's very important to look at how the situation is with the language that you are documenting or speaking if you want to go ahead with efforts of conservation. So some maintenance methods might be better, or revitalization. And I'll go through some examples in a little bit. So understanding the process of the endangerment cycle, I'm sure you have gone over this, but we'll just take a brief look at it again. So the cycle of language endangerment can really happen in just 3 generations. So it can be a really quick process, right? An example is where the first generation stops speaking the language to their children, and then that second generation, their children only has passive knowledge of the language because maybe they still hear it around, and maybe their parents are still speaking it to each other, but maybe not passing it on to the children. And then the third generation, the children of the children who only have passive knowledge, they don't have any knowledge at all because they're really not exposed to it too much in their environments, and maybe they don't see the grandparents too much. So this is how it can really be lost. A language can be lost within 3 generations. So there's many external factors that can contribute to language endangerment and complicate conservation efforts. Languages will often change when they become endangered and then begin to revitalize. I think this is an important thing to be aware of that might happen, is that when a language is endangered and there is a generation or two that don't speak it anymore, when you try to revitalize it, it might be very different, like say that 4th generation versus what that 1st generation speaks, right? Because we all know that languages, they're living things and they can change, right? And usually it's a slow process of change when when the language is being transmitted generation to generation. But when there's that pause between 1 or 2 generations, starting it up again, the language revival process, kids, they might put in their own syntax or change the phonetics a little bit. And that's just because they didn't have that intergenerational consistent transmission, right? So I think that's just something important to be aware of, that if a language has stopped being spoken for a while, that it might be a little different from what the grandparents have spoken in the past, right? And then lastly, the more endangered a language is, the more difficult but not impossible it is to revitalize. So it really is kind of a challenge, right, to revitalize or conserve a language. You can think of it as like you have the minority or native language, and then you have the majority language kind of around it, surrounding it, and you really have to kind of challenge it in a way. And in the end, it's really going to be some kind of balance between the 2 languages. So some factors in language conservation, there are 2 things that really will need to be addressed. The first thing is changing language attitudes toward the endangered language. So people will need to really value the language, and prestige must be restored to the language. These are things that not only need to be done within the community, but actually outside of the community as well, because you need to have that support in order to really have a successful strategy for language conservation. Like attitudes, of course, of the speaking community need to be positive, but you're going to be within this majority speaking language community as well, right? And like I said previously, you need to have this balance, like this harmony. So this is why this changing of attitudes toward a endangered or native or minority language, it really needs to change with everyone that's going to be in the vicinity of the language. And the second thing is that children need to acquire the language again. So only when attitudes change will parents want their children to acquire the language, and that's just a natural thing, right? So those are two big hurdles, attitudes and children language transmission, that really need to be addressed in order to really have a successful language conservation program. And the goals of conservation are usually increasing speaker numbers. This could mean large numbers or small numbers of people, increasing language use, so encouraging use of the language in daily life and activities among all members of the community, and increasing domains of use. Domains of use meaning where the language is used. So not just in the home or at school, but also at the marketplace, work, government, within media, social environments and places of worship, whatever. All of those places, the language needs to be spoken in order to really have a well-maintained language. And these three things, they really are interconnected, because obviously when you can increase domains of use, then you'll automatically increase language use, and hopefully language speaker numbers will go up as well. So these goals are intertwined with each other, and increasing one, hopefully you can increase the others. So with that said, there are a lot of problems that can arise from language conservation programs. And just to be honest, like in reality, there have been many programs that started and just were not able to continue because they ran into some of these problems. You need speakers, right? You need native speakers to be able to start and continue any program. So that's one big thing. And these speakers and even participants, they'll need to hold their interest and involvement over a very long period of time. Government policies and even socioeconomic hurdles could be in the way of really making a successful program. Again, domains of use is an issue, getting the language in all domains. Having enough and the correct type of pedagogical materials has been a big problem in the past. And I think this is one of the ways, like, you guys with your materials and documentation can use to transform into pedagogical materials. There can be challenges in that because of funding and time. So all of these things are common problems, and it's just good to know, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done, right? So how can we actually conserve a language? Well, we have to first look at it as levels of magnitude. There are large scale and small scale types of strategies. So large scale means with a country or community-wide efforts to try to reverse language shifts. Some examples of that have been with Israeli Hebrew, Scottish and Irish Gaelic, and Olelo Hawaii. So these have been really huge community-wide country type efforts. So that's large scale. And on the other side, you have very small scale efforts. And this means an individual or small group efforts. So just one family in the home, or maybe at a community center, a group of people want to try to revitalize and conserve a language. So you have large and small, and just everywhere in between as well. And then we have different approaches. So these approaches can be done in a large or small scale, and I'm going to get into detail about that in a minute. So the categories that I'm going to present here are education, government and nonprofits, and mass media. And this isn't an exhaustive list at all of types of approaches you can go with conservation, but this is just what I'm going to talk about today. And one thing I think I forgot to mention is that language conservation, this field is actually, it's quite new relatively. And so it's still changing, and it's still, there's still a lot of room for growth. So I think depending on how people are, like what kind of skills you have, or your background or your creativity, you could really develop different types of conservation programs. I don't know, I think I just would encourage you guys to think outside of the box when it comes to conservation approaches. I'm going to show you some that have been done, but again, like this is such a developing and interesting field that I think you can do a lot of different things with, and I'm a big supporter of that. And one thing to keep in mind too is that one approach is really not enough, but it can be a start. So if you really are thinking about doing a conservation program or something, starting with one is great, but then eventually you will need to delve into other categories, because like again, spreading the language within a lot of domains is one of the big goals of these types of programs. So first we're going to look at an educational approach, and this has been really the most popular type of conservation effort out there, done by all types of stakeholders like the community, governments, linguists. And I think one reason why it's been so popular is because it's probably, it's one of the most salient ways to take language documentation and turn it into pedagogical materials. And also it's just the most direct way to teach children, right, the language. So this has been definitely the most popular approach, and there's been different ways to do that. One is language nests. This is in a preschool or kindergarten setting, and what it is, like you can see in the picture, that child care providers are native speaking elders or adult second language learners, and they speak the native language with the children all day, and on a regular basis. And this is the benefit of language nests, right? That the children can get input with a lot of time daily. The first language nest that happened was in New Zealand with Maori language in 1982. And it was a really like a community-based movement, and it was quite successful, and a lot of other communities that wanted to try language nests look toward this framework that was done with Maori in New Zealand as a foundation for their language nests. And this is actually one example of kind of a, like it could be small scale type of conservation project, and later on it could build into a larger thing. So immersion schools, this is definitely going to be kind of a large magnitude type of thing where a whole country or community needs to be involved to really create. So this is post-kindergarten level, and it's where some to all academic subjects are taught in the indigenous language. An example here in the picture is actually right here in Hawaii on the island of Oahu. It's a Hawaiian immersion school. It's for kindergarten through 12th grade. English is not introduced until later on, because they understand that these students still be able to get English just in their daily life. So in school, it's all Hawaiian, and they focus on traditional cultural practices. But, you know, math and science, that's all taught in Hawaiian. So they'll be able to have that kind of, they'll understand that kind of language and everything like that. But this is definitely a large scale type of program. So master apprentice programs are more small scale, and this is very interesting because all participants are actually adults. So you have an apprentice, which is a heritage speaker, and this person is paired with a master who is a native speaking elder. They end up meeting regularly and just having conversation in the native language. An example of this is the Chickasaw Language Revitalization Program, founded in 2007. There's approximately, so how they do it is that they have about 20 individuals participating, and then their goal is to have 10 of those participants become fluent speakers within 18 to 24 months. And then it's really like a cycle then, because then those 10 fluent speakers can actually go on and become masters themselves, and be those mentors for other people that want to learn the language. So it's a very like cyclical type of program, and it can be done on a very small scale. But you need that commitment of elder speakers and participants. So I just want to quickly tell you about this exceptional case of the Miami Native American language. So this language was dormant, I believe from like the 1960s or 70s. And there was one man who's in the picture, Daryl Baldwin. He started revitalization efforts all by himself. He taught himself from archived documents from the Smithsonian National Anthropological Archives. And these archives were from the 17th and 18th century. So it's kind of like, wow, like amazing that he was able to do this. And this actually shows you how important it is that when you document your languages, that you end up archiving them, because you never know, in like 50, 100, 200 years, maybe someone will want to access them, right? So this guy, Daryl Baldwin, he was able to do that. And he actually did this in conjunction with another, like a PhD student who ended up, I believe, reconstructing the grammar of the language. And Daryl Baldwin actually ended up going back to grad school just to study linguistics so he could understand the science of languages. And him and the other guy, they ended up kind of like putting it all together. And then Daryl Baldwin and his wife, they ended up raising their kids as native speakers. And now he says that there's easily 500 people using the Miami language on a regular basis, even if it's just a word or two. So it's just really amazing how it went really from no speakers anymore to 500. But it was a lot of effort and work, and it took a long time. But this is obviously one of these small scale individual type of examples. So now I'm going to talk about a government and nonprofit type of approach. And again, like, I don't know all of your guys' backgrounds. So maybe some of you actually work in government, or maybe one day you'll be a politician, right? So maybe you can implement some of these things in the future. Who knows? Or even, put on like a national festival and event. So this example is from the country of Wales. I'm not going to attempt to say this festival name, but it's a Welsh language festival with poetry, musicians, performances, arts, etc. And it's really cool because they have these competitions in all of these categories of like poetry, literature, and music. And what people do is they don't just end up like speaking Welsh during this the few days of the festival. Like, people actually practice and take time during the whole year to really get ready for this big, huge festival. And it really promotes language use like outside of the festival and, in everyday life, right? So this festival has been credited with supporting the survival of Welsh literature, poetry, and culture. And if you want to look more into this festival, the website is right there. But these types of events, it really like promotes the language and the heritage and the awareness. And that's definitely one of those things, right, that we talked about earlier about changing language attitudes, right? And this is one way to do that. So signage and place names, it might not be obvious, but this could definitely be a type of conservation method, right? Street signs and places of interest in the local language promote heritage and relevance. It's important to keep the identity of the land, and the signage can be bilingual. So if you look at the first picture, this is a sign in New Zealand in English and Maori. It says, "Slow down, penguins crossing," which is super cute. But one important thing to keep in mind is that with language conservation, you have to remember that most likely you're going to end up having a bilingual environment because you're going to have that majority language there. It's not like you're trying to get rid of one language, right? You're going to have to live in harmony. So bilingual signage is a really good kind of way to just promote the language and just raise awareness of the native language in the area. The sign on the bottom is here in Hawaii, it is a name of a town. So it's just important to keep that going too, those traditional names and things like that. And so for this is more like a government level type of thing, obviously, but I wouldn't suggest just like going and placing signs everywhere, but wherever you are, yeah, maybe you become a politician one day and you can make a difference and do this, or even you can, in your town or village, you could make a motion and say, oh, I think all our street signs, we should make them bilingual and have the local language on there. And that's just one step in the conservation process. This one's really cool I think. It's bilingual business promotion. In Ireland, they've done this quite well. There's an organization that actually promotes bilingual use in businesses. So they'll actually help businesses translate menus, storefronts, and websites from the majority language English into Irish. From this picture, you'll see that there's a lot of bilingual signs and menus and things like that. So again, bilingualism is kind of the reality of how the future is going to be when you're trying to conserve or revitalize any minority language. So mass media approaches. Television and radio is really interesting. So there are some stations out there that are devoted just to raising awareness of Indigenous cultures and languages, and they end up hiring Indigenous people to run everything. In Taiwan, there's the Taiwan Indigenous Television Station, and there's actually 16 officially recognized Aboriginal languages. And while they can't have a station for every single language because the population is so small compared to the in proportion to the larger population, but they do have one channel, and they have the news in every single language, and it's in a rotation. There is the Aboriginal People's Television Network in Canada, and it's made by for Indigenous people in Canada and the United States. In New Zealand, there's Te Reo. It's a media channel, and it exclusively broadcasts everything in Maori. So maybe somebody out there has, connections to television or radio, and this might be a cool idea for the future. You never know. And then social media. So all you guys right now are on Facebook. So I know you guys have some kind of connection onto social media. But yeah, you can make YouTube videos. And this is a very small scale thing, right? You can make YouTube videos. You can take the materials that you've documented. You can make some kind of story. You could make like a little cooking show with traditional recipes and do it all in your native language, or also do it bilingually. You could make music videos, right? There's so many things you can do to kind of get the awareness out there and get your language known, right? And it might just get the interest of other people in your community. You can make a Facebook community. That's a great idea now, since we have to social distance and everything because of COVID. But you can have a Facebook community of people who speak your language, and you can share things on that. TikTok, I have that on there, and with question marks because I'm too old to use TikTok. But I'm not 100% sure how it works or anything. But I'm sure there's some really cool, innovative person out there who can make cool endangered language TikTok videos, right? So the point of this is just to show that technology can really be a vital part of language conservation and revitalization. And social media definitely is a method to reach younger audiences. So if you remember, one of the things is about changing language attitudes, but also, having young people learn the language again, and you need them to have that interest, right? So social media might be a way to go. You could even just like do lessons over social media. So what you can do in your community to help support your language, well, these are just some basic tips for successful conservation efforts. You have to really have long-term community commitment and enthusiasm for conservation. It really is, again, it's an uphill battle, and you really have to be dedicated to really see this through if this is something you really want, right? The second thing is you need a well thought out plan with step-by-step achievable goals, but also be adaptable, right? So maybe you say, I'm going to start a language school and all these kids are going to learn the language, right? Like 100 kids or something. But maybe it's actually more realistic to say, oh, each year maybe we just have like 2 kids, be really interested in learning this language, right? So having goals is really good, but also being adaptable and flexible is really what will make a successful conservation program happen, right? So you also need to have speakers and adult learners willing to act as mentors and teachers, and this cannot be stressed enough because you need their knowledge, right, to be able to like go through any kind of strategy or programs. Language immersion is very important. That goes with number 5, commitment to language use in most domains, right? Not just school and at the home. There's been many cases of language conservation efforts where they teach it at school, but then there's no other places for the kids to speak the language. So it really becomes more like a school type of thing. So this is why you need to break that habit and really have the language be in all domains. So what you can do is really just start small and just take it step by step. So you could create domains in your everyday life where you only speak your native language, for example, like in the kitchen. So you could say, oh, every time I'm in the kitchen, I'm only going to speak my native language. Like if you're cooking, if you're talking to somebody else, whatever, that's just one small way to start. You could find or become a mentor and speak only your native language for a few hours a week. So it's kind of like master apprentice, but on a very small scale. You could create small groups of people who do culturally important activities like crafts and other types of skills, or even cooking. Could get together once a month and only speak your native language. That's a small step. And you can do a project on some interesting aspect of your language or culture and get other people interested in conservation, right? So the point is, one person can really make a big difference. And I believe all of you out there have the capability of making a difference in the language that you're working with. All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about funding. So I actually think like the documentation that you've learned how to do throughout this webinar and some of these revitalization conservation efforts can be done with very minimal money, right? But maybe there is a time where you would like better equipment for like a better recorder or video camera or microphones, or maybe you need money for pedagogical materials or, I don't know, starting a small festival, right? So this is when you're going to need funding. And there are 2 that I'm going to tell you about. The first one is called the Foundation for Endangered Languages. The website is right there, so you can take a look at it later on. It is a UK-based funding institution, and they fund preservation and revitalization projects worldwide. Their priority is given to projects that focus on revitalization of an endangered language and or support the use of an endangered language in its community. So this award's really cool because it is about conservation efforts. And I actually saw, when I looked at some of the examples and past awardees, and I saw that they gave money to someone who wanted to start like a master apprentice program, like a small one. I don't know what they wanted like the funds for, but it could be something from renting space, right, where people can get together, or just providing donuts and coffee, or it could even be to pay participants a small fee. Sometimes people need those kind of incentives, right? And I saw another example. It was someone wanted to do like a survey of this endangered language. And I think that's actually a great idea and a great first step. Like if there's not a lot of information out there about the language that you're working on or you want to work on, doing a survey just to see who in the community speaks it, how many people speak it, what's the demographics, like how old, and maybe even getting information about their language attitude toward it, and maybe how they think as a community, you could work together and say how you would want to strategize to make a conservation plan. So a survey would actually be a really cool start too. So awards are up to $1,000. And you first need to become a member of FEL, the Foundation for Endangered Languages. So you can just go on the website and click on that and like become a member. And if you're a member of a endangered language community, they actually waive membership fees, which is really cool. And applications for this are actually just due at the end of the month. So it's I think it's a little less than 4 weeks away. December 31st. So this is totally something somebody could do if you have a cool idea for a conservation project, or you want to do one of the types of methods that I talked about in this webinar. All right, so the second one is from the Endangered Languages Documentation Program, ELDP, and there's their website. So this is a bigger organization, and they fund only documentation projects, not revitalization or conservation programs, right? So it's only strictly documentation, and applicants of any nationality can apply. But the only thing is that you need to be affiliated with a host institution, something like a university, and I'm not sure what else could be considered like a host institution, but you can find that information out on their website. And the more endangered a language is and less documented, it's more likely to succeed in obtaining a grant from them. And unfortunately, this year, due to COVID, no grants will be awarded. But normally applications are due yearly on January 15th. So actually, this kind of gives you more time, because if you just started learning about language documentation with us, now you have a whole year to actually plan something, write up a proposal, and try to get a grant. And ELDP, they end up giving out 4 different types of grants. They have small grants with a maximum of £10,000, which I think is quite a lot of money, and they call that a small language documentation project. They give out individual graduate scholarships for PhD students that want to conduct something longer term, from like 12 to 36 months. They have individual postdoctoral fellows for recent PhD graduates, for large-scale documentation. And then they have these major documentation projects, which you can get up to £150,000. And this is a very large project with multiple researchers over a long period of time. So they have different types of grants, and depending on your project. So this is actually better to have a longer period of time to really plan what you want to do for documentation, and really make a really great proposal for them. So yeah, again, if you want to do like a conservation or revitalization project, the Foundation for Endangered Languages is probably the better way to go. But if you want to do a documentation project, go with ELDP. Those are just 2 funds out there that you can try. There are others, but those are 2 that are quite common, and I would suggest trying those. Okay, so I think I've talked enough. Let's see, my Facebook feed, I couldn't see anything new, so I'm going to see if there's any questions out there for me. Hi, guys. Hi. Yeah, I'm going to post the PowerPoint afterwards. Aloha, Yumi. Oh, that's cool. Yumi's going to participate in the Master Apprenticeship program. That's awesome. Oh, okay. Sorry about the audio. I hope it's just like a delay. Let's see, Dennis is talking about a Finnish study strengthening second language learners for majority children, but has negative effect when being used for minority children. Oh, hold on, what is this? Second language learning. Oh, so Dennis, okay, he says, I heard about a Finnish study which states that bilingual education is only strengthening second language learning for majority children, but has a negative effect when being used for minority children. Let's see, I've never heard of this study, so if you have like a link to it or something, that would be kind of cool to read because, yeah, what I've heard and have learned about is that bilingual education doesn't have a detrimental effect at all, but it should strengthen languages and cognitive abilities and all that. So I don't know. I don't have a take on this. I think it's good to read the research first to really understand what they're talking about. Um, oh yeah, okay. Anna says this too. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Don't put it anywhere. I said this. Okay. Um, yeah, Twitter. I mean, there's so many social media things out there that you can use, right? And it's something you can definitely do and have like a small impact yourself. Um, okay, so yeah. Yeah, so Yumi, yes, you are a self researcher, and definitely you can apply to the FEL grant. It's smaller; it's about $1,000, um, but definitely try for it. Let's see, what is required from the host institution for ELDP? So Marisol asks, what is required? So what I just read about ELDP is that they don't give money directly to you. They need to give it to some kind of institution who has the ability to give out grants. So I think if that's something you want to go for, look into it more, especially if you're not a part of some kind of university system. Um, because I mean, it's possible that they give it out to different types of nonprofits as well. I'm not 100% sure. It's all that legal type of stuff. Um, so look into that. But all I know is that they just don't give it directly. They need to have some kind of methods in place to give that money out, right? Because they want to make sure it's being used for what you say it's going to be used for, right? You're not just like pocketing it, right? So if you're going to say, oh, you need so much money for travel, so much money for equipment, so much money to pay participants, even, this is why they go through some kind of host institution. Oh, okay. Anna said this. Are there other places to look for funding? Um, I think probably just Googling it would be a good idea. There's some places that actually have that I looked into before that have closed or kind of changed their process. So this is why I don't have more information for you right now. But yes, Anna has some great, great ideas. If I find any more granting institutions, I will put it up in this Facebook group. Okay, I think probably Anna has some more. Maybe Zach and Shirley know other ones as well, and we'll just throw them all in there if you're looking for other funding institutions. Okay, so Lisa asks, how would you administer a community language survey before initiating revitalization work for reservation communities and off-reservation communities? So language surveys are just about they're like surveys to gather information, basically. And I think it is a good way to it's a good step if you don't know a lot about the language, about people's attitudes. And it's kind of a good way, actually, I think, to introduce this idea of language conservation in your community if you know, they've never heard of it before, anything like this, right? So you can gather this kind of these attitudes and what people think in your community, and you can have all this information, and then you can present it to them afterwards and say, oh, this is what people think about our language. And people are maybe interested in having a language nest, for instance, you know? And then the next step would be to create a language revitalization program then, you know, once you have everyone in the community kind of on board. And I think that's really important because, and maybe I didn't stress it enough, but with any kind of conservation work, the community needs to be kind of like the number one people involved because it is their language, right? And so they have to want to conserve and or revitalize the language, right? Anybody from the outside, it's actually not your place to go in and say, oh, let's revitalize your language. The people that speak the language, they're really the ones that have the right to say that. So this is why I say it's good to get a survey even first, just to see if everyone's on board, you know? Yeah. Yeah, please share anything with us on this group. It's really cool to hear what other people are doing. And like I said throughout my talk is that I really think that it's a really new field. So if anybody has ideas out there, please share. Personally, I'm actually looking into economic approaches to language conservation. I think it's a really important sector that hasn't been really looked at enough. So that's something that I'm really interested in. Peter, Oki, why don't you, I'm going to post the PowerPoint slides afterwards, so please take a look at that, and you can also rewatch this video about some of the suggestions for how you can try to create revitalization programs or conservation programs. Okay. What is this, Anna? Let's see. I'm not too sure what Anna's talking about here. I wonder if it's the one that I was a part of. I can talk about that actually too really quick. I was a part of a group of students at the University of Hawaii at Manoa who had a NFL grant through a professor to go to Indonesia and actually train university students there how to do documentation work. That was a really cool experience. And oh, okay, I see. Okay, so it's a different thing, but I'm gonna talk about this one anyway. We actually went over and trained students on how to do documentation work, and then we had kind of mini documentation field work sessions with different languages. You can check that out, what we did at LDTC.org for our like on tour type of things. Yeah, that was, it's not exactly revitalization work, but I would consider it more conservation, what we kind of did, because we're trying to build capacity of really having, I really believe in having community members document their own languages, right? Like, it's great that I can help and show how to do things, but you know, it's totally different when a community member has the ability to do it themselves. So that was one kind of training that I've also done, is to train people to do documentation work themselves and then go out into their own communities. So that could actually be a kind of a cool project in itself as well. Okay, very cool. So Anna just sent some more links, and that's it, I think, with the questions. But okay, I don't know if there's anything else, please type it in the next minute or so. Otherwise, I think we are finished with today's topic. That was really fun. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I tend to do that when I'm nervous. But I wish everyone a really nice day. Oh, cool. Socioeconomic empowerment language. So I wish everyone a really good day. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember tomorrow's special guest speakers. And yeah, see you guys again. Thank you for letting me teach this lesson. Bye.